all, welcome to Eagles Canyon Raceway. My name is Faye Hadley. You may recognize me from a couple different shows on Motor Trend. All Girls Garage on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and Motor Mythbusters. But believe it or not, I don't just play a mechanic on TV. Actually, it's my real job. And this is actually my real work uniform that I earned when I got my first job working for Toyota, which was at a Portland area dealership. I started out my career on the express maintenance line. So shout out to all of you that trained me at Broadway Toyota. Heck yeah, y'all are the real MVPs. Because of you, now, it's how I make my living. Enough about me though, because the real MVP is this all-new 2022 GR86 behind me. This is awesome. Everything about this car really captures me at the soul level, because this car is a huge step forward for Toyota. And while I can geek out on all the technical aspects and show you underneath the hood, all that stuff, which I will do, what I really want to speak to you at this very moment is the sports car element. For that, I'm going to need help from a special friend of mine. So, hold on. Hey, yo, Ken! Ken Gucci, y'all. Hey, Ken.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, welcome.
Thank you.
So excited that you're here.
Excited.
You are the absolute perfect person to help me introduce this car for so many reasons. I mean, you have an extensive history with the Toyota brand.
Yep.
But not only that, you have kind of a personal relationship with this car, going way back. So for the folks that don't know, you are a driving legend. and you got such a cool history. So would you mind just giving a quick rundown on your history for those?
Yeah, you're right, Faye. I actually have an emotional attachment to just the numbers 8 and 6. And to get into that, my name is Ken Gucci. I am a professional driver for Toyota Gazoo Racing USA, driving the GR Supra and the Formula Drift Championships. But I did get my start in drifting about 20 years ago, coincidentally, in a 1986 Toyota Corolla GTS, the last of the rear-wheel drives, or also known as AE86. Yep. Now, fast forward to 2007, I actually got my start in the Toyota racing family under Scion Racing, and that's when we debuted the FRS in 2012. And if you know the FRS, the heritage actually comes from AE86. So just with that car, I felt like I went full circle. So now that I'm standing here, debuting a 2022 GR86, it's just mind-blowing to me. So couldn't be more exciting to be here, and I just really can't wait to show you guys what this car is all about.
Oh, absolutely. And you are the perfect person to do it, because you had the history with the original, the AE86, then the FRS, and now this. So with that perspective, I'm just curious, what were your first impressions on this car? What stood out to you the most? Yeah,
without even driving the car initially, simply looking at it, I was like, oh my God, you really can't ignore the fact that you can create an almost immediate emotional attachment to simply the way the car sits, right? The aggressive nature of the body lines, the wide stance, balanced proportions, the low center of gravity. All of these features really embody the spirit of a sports car, even as simple as the front vent that actually serves a purpose.
I know, they're actually functional.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes! It's really interesting, because that first thing that you said, your first impression was that overall feel of heck yeah, this is a sports car. Clearly it is. Looks like it's going 100 miles an hour just sitting next to me. But when you start looking deeper, you realize that everything here serves a purpose. And engineers really thought about everything that went into this car. The functional matrix grille, for example, I don't know if you noticed, if you look closely, it's not an actual honeycomb pattern, but it actually has a G.
Little G,
the little G, for the GR.
I love that.
That is so cool. So I don't know, I'm sort of finding these things all over the car. So as a driver, I'm of course talking about the outside. I'm it's so pretty, but was there anything on the interior that stood out to you that were just oh, this is awesome?
It's almost natural to really want a cockpit that feels like you're sitting at home. Every function and every feature, all the switches that need to be there at the tip of your fingertips. And you just want something that's efficient, serves a purpose, and is really simple to navigate. And for that, I think they did a great job in upgrading the interior. For one, they didn't miss out on the tech. Everything you need to know is right there in front of you. So in that sense, I really appreciate the fact that they really did upgrade the tech in the car.
One thing I loved was that it feels like a sports car inside. What you're saying about the bolstering of the seats, absolutely. I really like the seats. And then also some of the the temperature knob, for example, looks kind of like an air fuel ratio gauge. So it sort of looks like already
it
they
really
designed
does.
it
Yeah.
like it's a race car,
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be. So actually, speaking of that, sort of nodding to something that you mentioned earlier was the low center of gravity.
Well, what makes the GR86 so great on the track is that it drives as it was intended to, and it moves really nimble and agile. And you really got to give it up to the engineers because they really took everything into consideration. All the changes are actually pretty small, but they're huge when you add it all up.
Yeah.
They even went as far as to dropping the license plate on what was originally on the trunk on the previous generation, now to the bottom part of the bumper. So everything adds up in the long run, and that translates to performance on track.
We're talking about millimeters and grams here.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem like that much. Do you actually feel those changes, especially from the FRS?
Faye, I think it's easier if I just show you on track. How about we go for a spin?
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like in this car?
Right now.
On the track?
Yeah, you wanna go?
Heck yeah, don't
All right,
ask me
let's
twice,
go.
come on! It feels so stable.
It really
Like
is.
I'm scared, but I'm not scared. You know what I mean? Ah! I'm scared. We're getting close to the wall there, Ken, and you're not hitting the brakes yet. That was amazing.
I can't get over how fun this car is, to be
Oh.
honest with you.
So that was insane.
That was a
I
lot
wish
of fun.
there was like some way for me to be able to like bottle up that experience and like share it with all of y'all, but I mean, I'm sorry. It's all for me. But at least what I can do is like help to sort of further explain the power plant. We can sort of like explain what we experienced out on the track. So first of all, this brand new GR86 is powered by the 2.4-liter Boxer engine, flat 4, horizontally opposed, pistons, and a crankshaft in the middle. That's not something that you normally see on like typical production cars. I mean, every now and then, but it's still sort of like a rarity, right? So how does that help out, like from a driving perspective? Does it?
Yeah, it definitely does. Like you mentioned, it's a very unconventional engine design. Most of the time you will see Vs or inlines.
Yeah.
But this is a horizontally opposed 2.4-liter Boxer engine.
Yeah.
And what that means is that the pistons move on the side of the engine. There's a crankshaft in the middle, like you said. Now, some of the advantages include, by design, naturally, they sit more compact because the pistons are on the other side, which means you can make the engine narrow. And with that, you can actually drop the engine even lower, which translates into lower center of gravity. The second part, or the second advantage, is that the engine sits shorter by design, which
Yeah.
means lower center of gravity.
I see a theme here.
The third advantage is actually, because the pistons are counter-punching each other, that actually provides a smoother acceleration ramp-up, which means a smoother drive overall, and quieter ride as well. So those are the main big three advantages to having a horizontally opposed engine.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's really interesting. I mean, and so some of you are probably thinking, wait a second, Faye, hold your horses. The previous generation had that engine too. Yeah, okay, it had a Boxer, sure. But there have been some significant upgrades made to this engine. It's bored out, we got more horsepower, 205 horsepower to 228 horsepower. We also went from 156 pound-feet of torque to 184 pound-feet of torque. But what's most interesting is torque curve and RPM stuff, which I'd really like to see. I mean, if you're sitting in the passenger seat, I can't tell the difference in the previous generation and this one. Is it you that made the difference, or is it the car?
Maybe.
So, can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, you mentioned bore size or increase in bore. You're right, it actually went from 86 millimeters to 94 millimeters in bore size, which translates to the increased torque numbers. The horsepower and torque actually came from other places as well. For example, the engineers redesigned the intake tube and the exhaust chamber so air runs more efficiently, providing more horsepower running through the engine. There's also small differences too. Like, for example, the intake valve diameter is bigger now, and they hollowed out the actual shaft so it runs lighter than the previous generation.
Oh
so
my gosh.
small differences everywhere throughout the engine bay, even as far as a lighter valve cover going from aluminum to resin that reduced vibration and made the overall weight lighter. So there's a lot of things that went into designing this new 2.4-liter engine package. You mentioned RPM and torque ramp up.
Yeah.
It's very important. So first of all, let's describe what the difference is between horsepower and torque. Horsepower comes into play, for example, let's say you're on the highway, you come across a slower vehicle in front of you and you want to pass them up, right?
Yeah.
So horsepower, you get on the accelerator, vroom, vroom, RPM goes up, pass them up, you're already at speed,
Yeah.
mission accomplished. Torque is a whole different playing field. Torque comes into play when you're, let's say, from a dig, right? you're at a stoplight, someone's trying to race you next to you, or you're just trying to rush home. It's actually the torque you feel first before you get up to speed. Another place where it comes into play is, perfect example, we're at the racetrack.
Yeah.
There are some corners where you want to stay in gear, but then because you fall off the power band, you have to downshift to get back into the power band. But if your peak torque comes earlier, you can actually stay in that said gear and accelerate out of the corner smoothly without missing any time on a shift loss.
Right. Oh my gosh. So it actually makes you faster in multiple ways.
It does, yeah.
Wow.
It all
That's something
adds
I
to
didn't think
performance
about.
on track.
So once again, like all these little things put together, and we get like the whole package. Another thing that I noticed you mentioning while we were out in the track was like how the car went exactly where you wanted it to go. So not only did it have power in the right places, torque in the right places, but it also like drove perfectly, like the way you described it. I was like, oh my gosh, I really felt that sitting in the car. Like I felt that low center of gravity. I felt very comfortable. I felt like the car was very like structurally sound, and there were some suspension upgrades. There were some stiffness upgrades, and there were some steering upgrades.
Right.
And I have a feeling that you felt all three of those out on the track. Can you speak to any of those?
Yeah, earlier I mentioned that what makes this GR86 so great is because it was designed to drive as it was intended to. And part of that comes with, like you said, the suspension upgrades, the upgraded EPS system or electronic power steering system, and they even went as far as to increasing the stiffness of the bushings that tie in the steering rack to the crossmember. So all that adds to a sharper steering feel. I kept saying point and shoot. That's exactly what this car is capable of. You basically point the steering wheel in any direction you want to go and just get on the accelerator, shoot in that direction.
So I thought
Very
that was just your
predictable.
skill. But what you're saying is that the car actually has a play in the performance that I saw out there.
Yeah, but not only that, what I really want to talk about is the structural increased stiffness or torsional rigidity of the vehicle. And they actually added diagonal bars that tie in the front crossmember to the frame, thus improving the structural rigidity of the vehicle. And for the back, they added a ring structure that ties in the upper deck to the main body, which also increased the structural rigidity of the vehicle. So everything really comes into play to really make the car feel a little bit more planted, more balanced, more predictable on track, and overall fun.
We've covered
A lot.
ton
Yeah.
today. I'm still sort of swimming in information right now, and I have a lot more questions to ask you, but I have a feeling that seeing the sunset, and I think that we are running out of time to maybe do another
Few more laps?
maybe. So
Should we send them back?
yeah, I think I'm gonna toss it
All
back
right.
to y'all. Have fun.
Yep.
Be jealous. Go ahead, it's fine. And what do you
go.
think? Can we see y'all?